Well, welcome to BaseCamp Live Backside. This is the part of the show where we just had too many good things to talk about in 23 minutes, and I know a lot of listeners appreciate there are commutes out there longer than 23 minutes, so they get to hear the extended version of this. But we are, I joked a bit of the 60-plus habits Charlotte Mason talked about. I think we've talked about 2 or 3 of them, and Maryellen St, what a blessing to have you here in the studio today. And love just to continue our conversation. So as we're trying to figure out what do we do, not only in our classrooms, but just as parents, as raising the next generation, what are some other points you can give us on wisdom from Charlotte Mason?
So the importance about habit training is that it rests with the parent or the teacher to train in the habit. That we all have these naturals in our classes who, if we say something, they do it exactly the way we want them to do it or the way it should be done. And, we think, okay, why hasn't everybody else now gotten that habit? Because they don't have the habit. That person really didn't have the habit because they actually trained themselves in the habit. It was their tendency to be neat. It was their tendency to be orderly. So how do we really bring people up in habit is that we begin with an instructive way of teaching the habit. So for example, if you're how do you skip lines in a math piece of on a sheet of paper when we put the title for the math work here. This is lesson number so-and-so. Skip a line. Number 1, this is where you write the problem. Skip another line, write the next problem. And then the teacher watches and goes around to make sure that every child did it exactly the way that it should be done. And in this way, the child realizes that you're very serious about what you've asked them to do and that they are going to follow the directions. And then also that you are there to shore up students who don't naturally follow those instructions. So Charlotte Mason talks about these 3 things that these characteristics need to be a part of teachers and parents. One of them is tact, one of them is watchfulness, and the other is persistence. And tact being one in which we don't want to be unsatisfied or dissatisfied with the child in that we come upon and saying, this is also sloppy, you didn't follow the directions like I said. So that would be very hurtful to a child. It would be hurtful to an adult as well. So that we use tact in that we get there earlier rather than later. I mean, as parents, if you're homeschooling your children, you know which child has a tendency to be slothful or sloppy, and the classroom teacher has that as well. They know which children have those tendencies, so they move towards them first rather than later. And so being watchful, Charlotte Mason's talks about being sphinx-like as a teacher, that they are ever present and that the student should feel your presence. So we ask that our teachers will be with their children in the classroom all the time, that they are present with them. They don't skip out of the room to make a phone call, or they don't attend to something else when the students are working there with them. They're shoring them up. They're in the presence of the students.
Wow. So those are excellent practical suggestions. So when you're dealing with a student that has an innate weakness, and Charlotte Mason saw children as persons, and she believed that we are fallen beings, and so I think you're right. I think we're sort of an age of specialists. So we think, well, this kid is just gifted in math, and this kid's gifted in English, and this one's just naturally an orderly kid, and this one's not. And I think, to your point, we're probably too quick to categorize and then dismiss the weakness as either an irretrievable, you can't fix it, or you can maybe manage it a bit. What would she say? I mean, what do we do with weakness? We should leverage the weakness and work out of it, not give up and just, am I thinking that right? Yeah.
She says we should support the weakness and inform the ignorance.
Okay. So if you have a child that's slothful, how do we support that? Again, that's where they work it out through habits. They find themselves being redirected to something. You were talking, I think, at lunch just about the constant level of diagnoses that students are getting these days from OCD and ADD and everything else. And so many of those things I know are probably not things that the student can actually work out of with just some guidance and redirection of habit. So what does that look like?
So when we're thinking about children and habit training, one of the things that we need to think about particularly is not just launch in on the relationship and saying, oh, let's bring change about. So the parent or the teacher needs to have a plan, a strategy in place. And so how can I really help this child grow up? So if I had a child who was given to sloth in my class, I'd say, you have a tendency that when I say we're going to take out our copybooks and do this, I hear a pound on the desk, or I hear a big sigh, and you're saying, do we have to? And so I'd say, yes, we have to.
Because you're going to get some candy, right?
Right. So this is our work,
Yeah.
and this is what we need to do. But I said, that's your tendency, so let's try that again. I'm just going to say it again. It's time to get out our copybook, and this time you don't need to say anything. You don't need to sigh, so let's try that. Let's get out our copybook, and the child's quiet. Because the truth is, if we're not forming good habits, we're forming bad habits just by not doing anything.
Yeah. So as you're saying that, I'm thinking of, is there a point in the age of the child? Your schools are K-12, and I think a lot of times people think, well, Charlotte Mason's wonderful for those elementary ages. But what does this look like in middle or high school? Because you can have a slothful 11th grader. Do you use the same technique and say, let's try that again? I mean, is there a point at which you have to adjust a little bit to fit the frame of the child there?
Yes, you would have to just a little bit.
What does it sound like to an 11th grader when they pound the desk?
So I would actually take the 11th grader outside the classroom door and talk to them alone, because I don't want to I do not want to humiliate them in front of the other students, because they will all be wide-eyed and wanting to listen. We're in an elementary classroom, not necessarily. So, and really just talk to them eye to eye and saying, I have a choice as your teacher to leave you as you are or to help grow you up. You're going to be in college in a few years, and you might get by with certain of these slothful tendencies, or you may not, but they will come up at another time in your life. And before God, I stand as your teacher, and I want to help you. And you might not appreciate it, and it doesn't matter to me, but I'm going to help you grow. And sometimes you won't like it, and sometimes you will be okay with it. But I'm going to do my job, and I just want you to know that.
Yeah, that sounds pretty effective. And then you continue to watch it, back to being present with them, so you're on that.
Well, and I also want to give positive affirmation and feedback too, because the brain does work at an optimal level when it hears good feedback, not good job, great job, excellent, but when you tell the student, I noticed that when I've asked you to do these 3 or 4 assignments, that you actually completed them in a thorough way. I didn't have to give them back to you. Look at how you're improving in your work. Let's just take a look at this one paper. Yeah,
and I joked about the candy, but that's I think I know for me a very a big aha moment is how often, there's literally the gold stars and the candy, and most of our schools don't do that, but we definitely, with good intentions, verbally affirm, like, that was really well done. Thank you so much. And so what we're doing is we're training them to seek our affection or seek our affirmation, I guess. And we've not left them to experience the richness of the text or the idea, which is really the objective. Is that how you...
Correct, right.
Okay.
So every time we say thank you, they think they're doing it for us. And we want them to do it for themselves, for its own sake, not for our sake, because we're not going to be around that much longer. Right.
Well, and again, we've talked in other... just did an episode, a couple episodes back, talking about the role of grades and just how that's a whole nother topic, but in particular how we reinforce it unconsciously at times, the importance of grades. When we say to our kids, how was your day at school? Oh, you got your math test back. How'd you do? Did you get an A or B? Why didn't you get an A? I mean, all of a sudden we've completely launched a different value system into their head, and we do the same thing when we wrongly affirm them. So that's actually a habit. We're training them to have a habit of loving the things that are really that God would love. There's an important part of the idea itself, which goes back to another similarity, and just to mention this, of classical and Charlotte Mason. I love Charlotte Mason's term for weak content or material. She calls it twaddle, and she talks about feeding our kids sawdust. So I think we do a great job of finding 125 of the greatest books of Western civilization. So we've got rich material, but if you don't deliver it in a way that allows the ideas to truly transform the child, all you've done is just had them go through, here's the Spark notes on this book, and I felt good because my teacher said I got an A and they like me. Like, we missed the whole point of the great book. So, okay, other habits. Well, David, what are you poised with a big idea over there?
No, actually, I'm enjoying the conversation.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, this is the backside.
Soaking it in.
Good. Well, this is the point where we're supposed to be passing the s'mores around. We just don't have any right here, but that's okay. So just for a couple more minutes and we'll wrap it up. So Maryellen, any other thoughts, just things that would be, I think, helpful to parents listening? What can we do at home? This whole idea of habit training, just what are some of the top things that you see as you travel around the country and you work with educators and parents?
Well, I was listening to a TED Talk a few months ago, and one of the speakers was saying this, and he said, every day we have a new brain. And I agree. I thought from everything I've read, he's exactly right. And so one of the things that we all think about is that, no, our children don't have a new brain. No, my spouse doesn't have a new brain. They seem to be acting in the same way all the time.
They don't have a brain.
But we actually do have a new brain every day. Our brains are plastic and they change. And I say that in a positive way because we have to have that vision for each of our own lives and also for the lives of the people that we love and for the people that are we're engaged in teaching or watching or overseeing in some way in a church situation or a ministry situation. We have the opportunity to see them as unmeasurable in their potential. And I often ask teachers why they see the need to measure someone. Why do you need to say that this child's the smartest or this child is weak in this area? And I think that, when I think about myself measuring people, it's because I measure people because then I don't have to expect more. And then my relationship changes with them. But if I really saw people as born in the image of God, then I truly don't know what the potential possibly is. And no one really knows. And so wouldn't it be a wonderful thing to look at the children that are before us in classrooms and in our homes and see them as people with full potential and that we were put in their midst to help grow them up?
That is that's a great point. I think and I also think the world's a simpler place when everything gets pigeonholed. But I think how easily we give up on students or we get discouraged with our own kids that this is how they will always be, and they have this bent. And sure, kids are naturally predisposed, but it's not a immovable force. The mind and of course the heart and the spirit at work. Are there I'm thinking as you're thinking about your vantage point, 20 schools now, international as well. There must be some stories that really stick out to you of some kids that were just sort of maybe the ones that everyone would have said, well, little Johnny's probably not going to amount to much. He's got, 14 different letters after diagnoses of all these issues. And you put him in an environment where there's grace and love and habits. And anybody stick out to you?
Well, I'm not thinking of anyone specifically right now, but I do know that there are children who've come to our school who are given to pride. They were the best student where they were before, and they were used to hearing that all the time. Their parents were used to hearing that. I once had a parent come in to my office and said, Maryellen, you know everybody in the class. I know you do. And I said, yes, I know them. And she said, is my child the smartest? And I said, why do you have to know? That's the important question to ask yourself. And I said, because, she goes, you're not going to tell me. My husband told me you weren't going to tell me. And I said, no, I'm not going to tell you because I really don't know. I don't know who's the smartest. And I said, and if I said your daughter or someone else's daughter or son, why would that be helpful? I said, because we really, truly do not know. But we have had students come to our schools that have been diagnosed with different letters after their name. And we ask that when children have those letters after their name, that we treat them as they are persons. And the truth is we don't know. And so we've had children come to our school and then other parents have said, unbelievable. I can't believe that everybody pays such close attention to everything that's being said here. And I kind of smile in the background thinking, oh, they are today. But at times they're still not, and we just do our work and bring them up. But it's really amazing how we can see children grow. But isn't that the nature of spring every year? We walk around, and I admire the crocuses coming up, the tulips, and all the bulb plants. And I look all around me, and it's a growing place. And schools and homes need to be a growing place.
Well said.
One of the things I like about the approach that Maryellen promotes, when you first hear habit forming, I think we tend to think very regimented and very high achieving, let's get everything right in order here, just so, as the British would say. Mm-hmm. But I think that the neat combination in Charlotte Mason is that you have this humanity that intersects with this habit formation. And that's kind of what was coming through in what you were talking about with regard to, trying to compare our kids to each other, trying to make it a very performance-oriented environment. Those things counteract education in most contexts. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, we're trying to achieve something, and whenever you're going down a path, you want to be sure that there's an end to it, you know where you're going, and some kids achieve it faster than others. But that emphasis that's built into the progressive school today, I think, has so damaged our ability to raise up children in the way that they should go, because each child goes a different way.
Yeah, and we don't have any. It's unsettling to us because we can't just get that report card and here's some letter grades.
Rank my child,
right?
exactly.
They're an A and now the world's a perfect place. Let's go do something else. It's like there's so much more you've missed.
It's not about the habits you're forming. It's about the performance level.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yep.
I just maybe a closing comment. One of the things that also impresses me of many things about your schools is the last 10, 15 minutes of the day. It's like kicking an anthill, and all the kids come rushing out of the rooms and grab mops and towels, and they clean the whole building up. What in the world? How does that happen? What is that about? And why is that happening?
So it's called chores. So
that sounds oppressive. Don't you have custodial services so these kids can get on back to their smartphones?
No.
Is that word labeled arcane in the dictionary?
I don't even know what a chore is.
Yeah.
What's a chore? Go ahead.
So I've read before, there's even colleges that do this, but I thought really would be a wonderful, this is where we live, this is where we are all the time. We're there 30 to 35 hours a week. This is our place, this is our space. So let's clean it up. And I didn't want to be the only responsible one. And so we've taught the children how to do their chores. I remember the first time we have teachers who have stations, and they help the children, teach them how to mop floors, teach them how to clean the windows.
Is that because they've never seen this at home?
I don't know. But parents have said that they're doing more at home, so that's a positive thing.
So those habits.
Yes.
Yeah.
So one day I went into the main area, and the floor was filthy. And I was taking out the mop bucket, and one of the teachers said, "Maryellen, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, they didn't do the floor very well." They said, "Call them back, or you're going to be doing that floor for the rest of the year." I said, "Call them back?" I'm the principal, by the way. He's the teacher. And so he said, "Maryellen, you'll be doing it." So I said, "Okay." And he's standing there. So I called the parent, and I said to them, "So-and-so didn't do the work very well. Could you please have him come back and do it?" She goes, "He'll be right there." So he rode on his bicycle to the school. He came back. I said, "Please clean the floor thoroughly." And then I went into my office because I didn't want to be too much with him. I didn't want to say, "Thank you for coming back. Thank you for doing your work." And so then I said, "Please just come by the office when you're finished." And so he did politely. And so we walked out there together, and I said, "Do you see the difference?" He goes, "Yes." He goes, "I'm sorry I didn't do it the right way the first time." And I said, "It's okay. You came back and did it. Enjoy your evening." And so there's no condemnation. It's, a weakness at this time for whatever reason. And he went on his merry way, and I went on my merry way. And I'm really grateful for we're all bringing each other up, because that teacher was bringing me up. And it's just another lesson in life. And we have that as, husbands and wives with the children. We have that as co-teachers and teachers in the same school with each other, and even with principals.
And I doubt there are many kids that throw a piece of paper into the trash can and it misses and they leave it there. I bet they all go pick it right up.
Pretty much. I had one child once say to me when I was walking down the hall, I go, "Mrs. St. Cyr, I saw some marks on the wall. I'll just tell you, I'll get those after school." I go, "Okay, thank you." Like I was worried about the marks.
Well, I was so inspired by that. We have adopted here at the Ambrose School, our house program. Actually, one of their point systems is based on what we call unity. And so the 6 houses are divided up into 6 different areas of the building. And so there's a point each week where we will have students get cleaning paraphernalia and actually clean those respected areas of the building, and then they're critiqued by that. So it's maybe I'm like, oh, we're not there. The affection is the motivation of points, not the love of clean. So maybe we need to adjust that. But it is working. It's helping. Lockers are checked. We don't have locks on them. You can open them up at any time. There better be a clean locker, or you might lose points there. So maybe we're still in the progressive candy model here, but I'm trying to move that direction. So anyhow, it's good stuff. All right. Anything else, David?
Well, I was just going to conclude. I know Davies, you were a sociology major in college, so this is probably not as shocking to you as it was to me, but I was a chemistry major, so I had to take a class on psychology. And remember, one of the first things they taught us was one of the psychologists, and you guys probably both know who it is, said, their idea is, I'm okay, you're okay. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, as a science guy, that is the craziest thing ever. I'm actually paying for this class. But it really soaked in to our culture. It is really the way everybody thinks. And what I love about what you're talking about, Maryellen, is it's not that way. It was not okay that young man went home and didn't get it all done. You brought him back, and you didn't. It wasn't a moral judgment against him. It's just you need to do. Yeah. We live in community,
right? And
you need to be part of the community, and we each need to sharpen each other.
Yeah.
So
good point.
Sounds like a great point.
All right. Well, thanks for staying long, Maryellen. We'll definitely have you back on. This has been a lot of fun. Again, many topics to. But I'm encouraged. I'm always convicted to listen to these things of ways to be a better parent. So thanks for your encouragement.
You're welcome.
All right. We'll have you back. Thanks again.